Hey guys, I am DM Zone. This is Gamers Oasis. I'm going to talk about the Living Dungeon. Okay, guys, so I'm here with my very shaggy self at this moment. Normally, as you guys know, I just have a mustache. Work has gotten to this thing where a bunch of people get sick, shall we say, different things, and they want to do a bunch of no shaves. This is going to be stepping into month 3, so this is 2 months worth of growth, and I got 2 more months left, and then I have to go back to shaving again, unfortunately. But it's all going to for a good cause, and I love actually having a beard, so this is nice for me. Anyways, so the Living Dungeon. Living Dungeon is something I'm doing at the LGS. The storekeeper and I kind of got together. We decided to go ahead and give this a shot. I came up to him saying I can't, buy a whole bunch of stuff. There's a lot of D&D stuff I already have. I don't need a ton more. However, I'll buy 5th edition stuff from you, as it comes. But I want to help, so maybe time is something that I can invest into you and help with the store and that type of stuff. So we were looking at Adventurers League, maybe starting like an Adventurers League there for the local players, and then they could branch out and play with people digitally and that type of stuff. But then I thought, no, I'm kind of wanting to run a mega dungeon, and I think the idea of like a persistent, never dying, never ending loop of a mega dungeon would be right on key. So I came up with a basic idea. I live in the county I live in Kansas is Finney County, Finney, and I turned the boss lord, I guess you could say, the dungeon lord, into Yinfin, which is just a change of the spelling of Finney, and then we go on from there. Anyways, so I've kind of like had little Easter eggs throughout the whole place like that, and I've I don't know how to say it. So the essentially, okay, so the way the dungeon works is you enter the dungeon through basically a stairwell. At the bottom of the stairwell, there is a rune stone. It's a Druidic Runestone. And it's been explained to you before you went in there by the Rune Master, who's a druid up on the surface, that these Druidic Runestones are designed to be methods of teleportation, and you've already practiced this before you've gone in, so you know how to activate them and work them and these type of things for the most part. You don't know all their ins and outs, but you know the basics. And you get down there, he says, when you get down to the bottom of the stairs, you can go ahead and activate that. You don't have to go down and down the stairs, you can just go down. So the party will then touch the stone, activate it, and then that's kind of like fast travel to the bottom of the stairs. And the reason why I have to incorporate fast travel, which I would not normally do in a game, is because if you only have a few entrance points and you have to get down to the 3rd level, even if you know the exact path, if this dungeon is repopulating, it's going to be like Tucker's Kobolds. If you know anything about that, just Google it. Essentially, you're going to be going through the same kobolds every doggone time, and it's a pain in the butt. Now, I don't have just one way down. I have multiple ways down. But if you're trying to get to a certain way down to a certain portion of the 2nd or 3rd level, then you need to be able to do that. Now, I'm not going to talk a whole lot about specifics. I'm just going to say that that's possible. I'm also going to say that it's possible to go from the 1st level to a lower level and to be able to access lower levels from outside of the dungeon. And I'm just going to kind of leave it at that, because there may be a person who plays in my game who watches this video. So I can't really go into too much detail. What I will say is I will do every now and then a progress report or talk about groups that have gone down, talk about their 3-hour game slot and what they did. And you guys can kind of experience what this dungeon kind of is as things become public knowledge to some degree. because if you weren't there at the game, you may not know what this other party did, and if they don't tell you, then you don't know. So I want to have some discretion there for those type of things, because part of that knowledge, part of that being able to get down there first, is I'm going to have first-time rewards, and then I'm going to have the other rewards. And the first-time rewards are going to be unique, and they're going to be very specific. So the first time a certain boss is killed, for sure, there will be a first-time reward. Maybe the sword that drops that's magical has a heraldry and a special name, and that's the only time that sword drops. After that, the same sword drops, same power level, the same everything else drops, but it doesn't have all that other stuff. Maybe it's not made of silver. Maybe it's not whatever, maybe it's not cold iron or phase steel or something like that, or flame touched or something like that, maybe it's not adamantium. And that's going to be kind of the exploration portion of this. You want to be the first one to go do this, and after you are, then you can kind of talk about it and be the big hero in the game store type of thing. And there's going to be there's a Discord set up for this where people are going to be talking about their experiences and that type of stuff. So on the first, I'm going to be running 2 games at Champion Archive here in Garden City, and it is going to be first slot is at 3 o'clock. I'm going to get there before 2, so I have a chance to kind of talk with people, find out who the first 5 people that are going to be in the game, because it's limited to 5 people, unfortunately. And then they'll go through the pre-made characters or make a character themselves if they want to make a character. We're doing the 27-point buy for stats, and then anything out of the player's handbook is just fine. Or actually, any of the books you have are just fine. We're not including Tasha's at this moment. I want to get a better handle on what's going on with Tasha's, because I heard there's some power creep problems in that. And if we find that there are certain classes that are just way over the top, like break things, then I'm probably going to exclude that too. So we have sort of that clause in there, like, hey, everything you've gotten with that character will transfer as far as loot and XP and that type of stuff, but we may have to make you make a new character if it's just completely breaking the game, because I don't want 5 of the same character because it's absolutely the best going in there and running roughshod. That's not the design or the idea of this thing. It's meant to be for fun. So while there's a competitive nature, we do want to keep it more people coming back and playing at the store type of thing. I think everyone understands the underlying reasons why you want to do that. So in that spirit, I hope that everyone plays fairly. Anyways, so we'll go ahead and do the first game. The game slots are 3 hours. They're a hard time slot, so if you roll an attack but you don't roll damage before that 3-hour ding happens, then literally the game ends and you don't complete your swing. The way the game ends in every game slot is the same. Yinfin ends up teleporting you back to a druid circle outside of the dungeon. Now, so far you've noticed probably that there's a druidic nature to this, and that is on purpose. The city is called Druidhaven. It was basically an ancient Druidic society that dug into the earth and was in the surrounding areas, and then an ancient race woke up and started to push the druids into the earth and away from this area, and that's sort of how that was. And now there's only a select few that still remain, keeping the circle afloat. Well, Yinfin has worked his way into the underground, has pushed them back out of the ground. Now they're basically in Druidhaven, which is a village, and that's it. And they're fighting for the last of it, and no one knows exactly why they're fighting for the last, basically 100 square feet, but they really are. And there's about 5 powerful druids that live in Druidhaven that keep the forces of evil at bay. And that's kind of how that goes. I kind of got off track there a little bit, so I'll go back into this. All right, so the outside of Druidhaven is barren wasteland that's basically dust and sand, and it's scorched, and things don't live in this portion. and there's a lot of dried sulfur smell and that type of stuff, like dried, arid textures, and it's like a faint scent of sulfur. Depending on which way the wind blows, you might have a lot of sulfur blowing towards you, and then other days it might actually smell like a little bit of nature, depending on which way the wind is blowing. So essentially, and I have an early map. This is an early map. This is not the map I use currently, but this is a map I built. Essentially, this is Druidhaven. This is Druidhaven, then right here is the Sulphur Flats, and then over here is the Barren Wasteland. Then over here, down here you have, oh good lord, right there. Yeah, you have a lot of plains, you have swamps, marsh. Over here you have more plains, and there's actually another small hamlet-like village. And then over here you have another village, real small. Over here you have mountains, and here you have actually a desert now. It's no longer plains. And then farther and up, okay, it's completely backwards. I have a forest, a sliver of forest. Each one of those hexes is a mile. It gives you an idea how big it is. That was really difficult, by the way, to do that backwards. It was messing with my mind. So that was kind of an early one to get an idea, get it out there, and then go from there. And I've done that, and I like that. Now I need to go ahead and do a different one that's better. And I've got that one done, and I just need to get it printed and sealed, which I may not have for this coming up 2 games, but I can show people on the computer. All right, so that's what the outside looks like. It's a sandbox world. There's no barriers other than terrain and your lack of will to stop you from running into something that will kill you out there. Basic old school D&D principles apply. Plains are generally safer than mountains. Swamps are generally more dangerous and make you slower. The farther away from roads and cities, the worse it gets. So there are enemies out there for sure that would kill a group of 5 players. Rumors of dragons and giants and that type of stuff, just to get into a little bit. But if you were to defeat them later in the game, when you're higher level, when you're not first level, those areas also provide clues and hints to the dungeon. So it's going to be both going into the mega dungeon to explore, and then coming out and then exploring the outside area to learn more about what's going on in that dungeon. And the dungeon is a true mega dungeon. It is far more than 3 levels. It's more than 6 levels. Are they fully detailed at this very second? No. But they will be by the time the players get there. And I think that's the important part. Once I got an area fully detailed and the players have been there, though, it kind of sets it in stone. This is what this is. The players don't have to worry about the dungeon changing because I didn't like something, for the most part. And if I do, I'm going to publicly state that. Like if I put rust monsters on a certain level and I decide that's just too much, then I'll either reduce the number of rust monsters and make that statement so that everyone knows. So they're not going there. So they're not going there because they think there's like 5 rust monsters and now there's only 2. I think that's fair. And if I decide that it's not powerful enough, then I'm going to say the same thing. I went through there, I made a mistake, and now there's not 2 rust monsters, there's 5. And that's going to be a thing. And then the player can decide what they want to do with that information. They may not go back there. They might talk to me and say that's not really that's really unfair. And then, well, me and the storekeeper or whoever will have to decide what we want to do at that point. Or they just have to, wait till later on. Maybe that's part of the design of the game. I don't know. But I'm going to try and be fair. I'm going to take all the years of experience. Been playing since 1989. The basic idea is I want to keep it the same so that when Party A goes through, they experience the same thing that party J experiences, even though some of party A might be with some of party J, because it's the first 5 players. So when you go in there, your makeup is going to be different. You may not have a healer. You may be all clerics. You might be whatever. I foresee people making a lot of alts just so they can keep playing. And I am totally allowing your character to have as much knowledge as you, the player, has. I don't think that's fair, if that makes sense. So if you step on a trap, like there's a pit trap on the 3rd square of this hallway on the left side of the hallway, and that's trapped there, I do not expect you to roll randomly to see whether or not that trap is there. You just know. So, anyways. And then from there, you can go ahead and do what you need to do. I need to get some more water for my drink. So, part of that is you're going to go back in there. You're going to know where the traps are. So, if the dungeon has a lot of traps, eventually those traps are going to become mundane to you, because you're going to know how to trigger them, you're going to know how to avoid them, you're going to know how to get around them. So the need for a rogue eventually should go away. It will go away. You just might have to spend 100 barbarians to do it. I don't know, but it should go away. And that, I think, is very good, because one of the things I'm trying to do is I want you developing maps, your maps for the dungeon. The map does not exist. You don't get to look at the map as it goes. Basically, the map is the torchlight. If you're in a room that's 100 foot by 100 foot and you have a torch that has 30-foot radius, you see 30-foot radius. And then you say, okay, I move 10 feet forward. I don't move the miniatures. I just say, okay, you move 10 feet forward. The room is still open. There's absolutely nothing around you. They're going to have to spend time to figure out what that map of that room looks like, and then draw it out, and then know that the east wall has 2 doors and the west wall has 1 door. And then they can go ahead and do that. Now, when they go into that room, they'll say, I'll go to the second. When they go back to that room in the future, they're like, okay, you're back in a room. They're like, okay, this room is about 100 feet long, if I remember right. I'm going to take the second door on the right. And you guys walk across the empty room, and you go to the second room on the right. It's going to be sort of a mixture of theater of mind in that way, and it's going to be a mixture of actually laying out the tiles. If no one needs the map, and they're willing to trust this player to get them there, and there's no encounters, they can say, okay, I go down the stairs, I go to the right. Okay, where do you want to go from here? And they tell me where they go. As long as they have the answers that correlate with the map as it is, and it is true, I'm not going to go lay tiles out. We can just speed through this part, and you can navigate your way right through it because you know how to do it. Then the players can get with that player and draw that portion later if they want, if that player is willing. If not everyone in the party consents to this, then I am going to actually go through painstakingly and do this. I would assume this would encourage cooperation to get for those 2 players to get with each other and say, here, look at my map as we go. And then the other player draws the map. This, again, builds that cooperation, that teamwork, that everything of that nature. Also gets away from being stuck in time sinks where you just have to go back to the same areas again and try and figure out the same puzzles. And hopefully people will write down the answers to these puzzles. And I have drawn some of these puzzles up. And I have drawn secret caches with different things in there. And these caches are going to be clues within the dungeon or outside the dungeon. The more difficult it is to figure out a cache, the greater the reward is. Also, the first time you figure out the cache, you get first time loot. Second time you figure out the cache, you don't. So there is that too. And then it's the same items again. If it's a potion of healing, it's a potion of healing. It just might not be a potion of healing that also works as the bottle itself has actually got a permanent light spell on it or something. Something that you could actually use forever. Instead of having a torch, you have a rope with an empty decanter on it, or maybe a decanter filled with something that makes it more tough to break. Or maybe it's got a goldfish in it. I don't know. And then you have, a light spell basically being cast on you the whole time. Something like that. So there's those type of things. And as you go through, the bosses stay the same. It may not be the same boss every time. Essentially I don't want to use computer speak a whole lot, but in the way level design kind of works like this anyways, you'll understand what I mean in a second. So if you have mini bosses or lesser bosses or whatever terminology you want to call them, minor bosses, I don't want to have only one for each area. I want to have 2 for each one of the areas. They may be in the same room, they might be in different rooms. They'll never be up at the same time, but they will be on some sort of rotation, or maybe a dice roll or whatever, and that will be standardized. So it will always be that way. And then right before the boss, I'm going to have a series of different heroes that the party will have to face, or probably will face, as they go towards it. And those are there's always going to be 4 of those. So you don't know which one of the 4 you're going to face. They're all different. They're all got their own problems. They all have their own hindrances. They all have their own, I wish we had a different party composition to fight this guy. And if the party dies, guess what? The party just died. But you keep all your knowledge, and your loot lays there on the floor. And now someone else in the next group can come along and pick up your loot that you left. It could be you coming back because you know exactly where your character died. It could be the next group. So I have a time slot on that day from 3 to 6, and I have an hour intermission where I get to know the new players, talk with the old players. 5 more players sit down. 5 new players have the first choice. Players from the first game have secondary choice. Because I'm trying to get more people into this. And then they go through and they do their thing. And, if the players from the first game want to tell the players from the second game things, then they can incorporate that knowledge into it. If the players in the second game ask not to be told anything, then I expect players on the outside watching to respect that and to not do that. So, anyways, that's going to be my thing. It's my jam. I don't know how long or how often I'm going to be doing it. I'll post things every now and then. I've got the first 3 levels done solid. After that, it kind of gets squirrely. But I know of the general idea. But I don't think there's any possible way for them to get past the 3rd level in the first 3 hours they play. So, anyways, we'll go from there. Hopefully we don't have 2 TPKs. It could happen. Maybe someone will find some loot they really want and then just decide to come back up to the surface and call the game session so they can get their XP and try this again in the future. I think the patient player will have an advantage. I foresee the possibility of one player deciding to run, and then they spend the next hour of real life time trying to evade detection so they can be teleported out of the dungeon without being killed because of wandering monsters. And then we'll go from there. essentially how that would work is I would just fast forward time on the real world by saying, okay, every 10 minutes of actual outside world time, or whatever the time is, maybe it's every half hour of actual outside the game time, whatever that might be. I won't say, it might change per area. You have to do a wandering monster encounter. And since we got an hour and a half until you leave, go ahead and do 3 wandering monsters encounter. If you complete that, the game's over. You get teleported out. We have an extra, hour and a half to talk about the game or get something soda or just whatever. But the session's over as far as the living dungeon, and you got out of there with whatever items you had. And I am keeping track of certain things like character creation dates, so that we can have birth dates for the characters, and I'm having death dates for the dates that characters die. I'm also doing. I'm having I have a book of evil deeds. So let's say that the paladin falls down, and maybe a rogue or a thief or whatever you want to call him with a potion of healing sees that he could give him a potion of healing and have the paladin stand up, or the magical cloak the paladin has could be taken, and he takes the cloak and runs away, and then hides until basically it's time to be teleported out. That would be an evil deed. That would make it into that. If someone were to start attacking the party, that would be added to the book, the evil deed, the Tome of Evil Deeds, or whatever you want to call it, the Book of Vile Evil Deeds. And then we'll go from there, and that will be publicly put out there in the game. So when you sit down with the player, potentially, this guy's a backstabber. And if it becomes too much of a disruption, if it becomes something that's not fun, if it's very deliberate, if the whole game is to disrupt the game, then I'll just politely talk to that player and encourage them not to do that, or explain to them why they can't play in the game anymore. Typical every night D&D stuff that you run into. So it's fun every now and then, but don't make it a big thing, and it's great to be the guy who never does that. Anyways, so maybe I'll have a tome of sacrifices. Maybe players that have sacrificed themselves for the party. The diametric opposing of the tome of or book of vile evil deeds. Anyways, these are how ideas come up like that. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Keep rolling those dice and let me know what you think down in the comments.